So probably worth quickly mentioning, and then we'll stop talking, that the very last the very last event of the SYNAPSE Festival this month, the last week of term, is at 5:45 this evening, and it's led by Sean Prime, and it's Ideas Business Bingo. Details on the blog side. Ashley, over to you to introduce yourself to the session.
Oh, that sounds so fun. Sorry. Like business idea bingo with Sean. Just sounds amazing. Right. Well, thank you for the introduction. Hi, everybody. I'm Ashley. And like they said, I run Over Productions, which is essentially a storytelling agency where I work with different storytellers to create events, but then I also do a lot of coaching and work with clients to build their confidence and understanding their story and building their story. So a lot of the work that I do is around personal narrative and really sort of getting your mind on your side when you're telling your story. So that's what we're going to be focusing on today. I will forward the slides to Phoenix at the end of this so that you guys can all have them. I will also put my email at the end. So if you want to get in touch with me directly to get slides, or if you have any other questions, feel free to do so. With all that being said, I'm going to share my screen and get started. I will let you know that I run really quickly through different exercises and things like that. So I'm just giving you a heads up now. If I'm going too fast, feel free to unmute yourself and just tell me to slow down. I will try to slow down, but I know myself and I go fairly quickly. So with all that being said, I'm going to share my screen and we'll get started. And yeah, okay. So this session is all about telling stories for entrepreneurs. We're going to go really quickly through introductions, through sort of figuring out your business idea and how to tell that story. I'm going to walk you through the hero's journey and a really fast-paced way to tell a story or create a story structure to get people on your side. And then I'm also going to go through a lot of other tips and tricks to build confidence and confidence in storytelling, etc. So with that being said, let's get started. Okay, so part one, introductions, introducing yourself. You are more than what you do, which I think nowadays is more true than ever because we are so many different things. We live in quite the creative economy. And quite often we're like, well, I'm not just this, I'm also that. Like I'm a wife, I'm a mom, I'm a entrepreneur, I'm a businesswoman, I'm a whatever. So there's lots of different things. So some fun ways to introduce yourself. Say you're going to a networking event and there's a lot of times when we are introduced by others or we have to be introduced to others or we've sort of lost that sort of ability to be social, I think, throughout the pandemic. So this is just some ways to get back into it if you have to go to a Zoom event, a virtual event, an in-person event, which is coming up soon, I think, I don't know, in the UK. How to introduce yourself, how to talk about yourself and your business, and how to make yourself available to others as well. First thing, your name. Hi, I'm Ashley. What do I do and how I do it? I'm a storyteller and I run a storytelling production company where I work with people to build their confidence within their story. But what I'm really interested in, I think and is a better use, and I'm really interested in the idea of personal mythology, the idea that we are the legends that we become. We create our own legends. We sort of build our own mythology. And I've read some books on this. I've talked to a couple different people in different countries about how they believe mythology exists, how they believe their personal narratives exist. So in doing something like this, not only do you tell the person you're talking to who you are and what you're doing, but then you invite the conversation to be bigger and wider than just you. You invite it to be something of, this is what I'm interested in, what are you interested in, and how might we further discuss this? So a lot of times when we start to talk about ourselves, we can often forget to ask others what's up with them and how their life is going and all that sort of things. So things that you can ask others, right? So what are your interests? What are the projects that you're working on? What's the next big thing that you're excited about? Because it's all about creating relationships. specifically with entrepreneurs, but also in telling each other our stories. What is it that you're into? What are you excited about? What's the next project you're working on? If you want to introduce your project or your business, I think one of the best ways to do this is notice the problem, right? So a lot of times we talk about like, oh, well, I run a storytelling company and that's me. But if I wanted to introduce my business of Oval Productions, I would say something like, I noticed a lot of people aren't very confident in telling their own stories. And I was speaking with colleagues, I was speaking with creatives, actors, performers, and they never felt confident in telling me the story of who they are, where they've come from. And I had this sort of like aha moment of like, maybe there's a career around this. Maybe there's a career around saying like, well, have you spent the time to think about what your personal narrative is and how to tell it? And then talk about how it's been going. So I've worked with a few different people doing this and that. And I've, heard from a lot of people of like, for personal narrative, it looks one way. For others, personal narrative looks something completely different. So then how might you invite people to be involved in what it is you're doing? So another way that you could talk about this is what I would love to see is if, we took storytelling into prisons and we talked to, felons or people that have been convicted of crimes of, how did their personal narrative unfold? Like that's a collaboration that I would love to try. And then at the end of it, there's always something that you can steal from. So if we look at, this whole festival, if we look at business models, if we look at the way people have built careers in the creative economy, a lot of times it's all about like, well, this business model works. That's something I'd like to give it a try. And it's that whole saying of steal like an artist, right? So how is it that I can like, oh, well, I really like the idea of, an Uber for storytelling, right? Like a storyteller shows up, they tell you a story, they leave, or something like that. Or they take you on a journey somewhere and you go like on a walk throughout, London or Edinburgh or something like that. And you're the Uber of storytelling. That's a new thing. Maybe I'll do that. Okay, that's part one. So now part two, turning daydreaming into day doing, right? So so a lot of you might have already figured out what your business is, what your project is, what it is that you want to be working on, right? Some of you might have, some of you might not have. So this is an exercise that I like to do with all of my clients just to figure out what it is that they want in their life and to give them the chance to dream a bit bigger, right? So if you think about a project you're working on, an idea you have, or a career that you have, these are some things that I like to ask people to go through. So take some time, not now, sometime in the future. Take some time and I think we've got, if you guys wouldn't mind just muting, if I could ask everybody to mute so we can, because I do go quite fast, sorry. Okay, so now if we could think about all of these different things. So give yourself 30 seconds or a minute on each of these. So ideas for growth. If you think about your career, your project, your business, what's a really good idea for growth that you might have? Where do you want to go? How big can you make it? Can you invite volunteers to come in and do something with you? Or would it have to be staff members? How big of a staff do you want to have? What do your customers want? What do your customers look like? What do you want their journey to be like? Yeah, if you are speaking or if you are going to tell people about the story of your business, where would you want to make an appearance? Would you want to be on a TED Talk? Would you want to, what services and products do you want to phase into this business? What do you want to phase out? Do you want to start doing something, but then do you want to like do that for a little while and then try something else? Do you need to develop skills to keep going? So these are just questions to ask yourself when you're building a business, when you're building a project or an idea. I think a lot of times we get an idea in our heads and we're like, right, this is how it is. This is how it has to be. And that's it. But like a lot of times, if we take a second to just reflect, I think this last year has given us all a chance to reflect on what's happening in our lives, to reflect on all of these sorts of things. But if you take a second to reflect on all of this, then you can go back and be like, right, so I've noticed that I started out, thinking I wanted to start a podcast, but really what I want to do is get to know individual people and hear their stories. So phasing out certain things and then bringing certain things in can be a gift. So let's say that you go through this exercise, right? You've got your ideas down, you've got a massive list, you know where you want to go, you know where you want to invite volunteers and people to be a part of this. So now put a microscope to it, right? So what excites you? What are you actually curious about? What is something that you have started to do, but you don't really like, but now you found something else that's even more exciting? What do you feel good about doing? What makes you feel good about you? And then if you could do 1 to 3 things on this list, and that's it, what would they be? So circle the most important items on the list, and then let's try those. Let's put a prototype in place to try to get those things moving. Okay, so then what do you need for that? So there's new skills. A lot of times we need to develop new skills. Maybe it's learning a new trade. Maybe you just need to get certified in something. It's a weekend course that you have to take for your business or your idea or whatever it is you're doing. And this is all going to come back to storytelling. So I know that I'm going really quickly and I haven't really mentioned story yet, but we will get there, I promise. So once you figured out what the skills you need in order to make these 3 things happen, now let's talk about the people. So there's this metaphor of a business is a bus, right? A business is a bus. The leader of the business, the founder of the business is the driver. So if the leader's the driver, the leader's job is to get everybody on the bus in the right seats. I mean, you have to get all of your people on the bus, and you have to know where they fit in the bus in order for the bus to go and have a smooth ride, right? So sometimes it's a matter of like, well, maybe quiet people like to be close to the front. They like to see the road. They like to have a plan. Maybe salespeople are loud and boisterous. They want to party in the back, and that's where they need to be. Whatever the situation is. But if you think about your business as a bus, how are you going to find the right people, and how are you going to get them on that bus in the right seats? Making new contacts, attending virtual events like this one. Hey, everybody. How are you going to meet new people and get them involved? And then having a mindset, right? So making sure that you know who, sorry, my screen is frozen. Technical difficulties, everybody. How do we get past these? We pivot, that's how. Okay, so putting a new mindset forth, right? So it's like knowing that maybe this is not where I am right now, but knowing where I want to go and believing that I can get there. Okay, let's move on because we have a lot more to get through. Okay, so skill set. Now I'm going to talk about zones. So a lot of times there's a book by, I think it's called Gay Hendricks. So Gay Hendricks wrote a book and it's called The Big Leap. And in it, he talks about different zones. So there's the zone of competence, or no, let's start at the beginning. There's the zone of incompetence. A lot of times when we're starting off, there's certain things that we try to do that we're not very good at, right? We're not good at it. We don't like to do it. It doesn't bring out like our best selves. We're not in a state of flow, and that's the zone of incompetence. A lot of times, young entrepreneurs, new entrepreneurs, people that are trying to build a project or idea and get it off the ground, they start off and they're like, well, I'm just going to do everything myself. And a lot of times that stalls them and it stalls their progress. So knowing what you're incompetent at can be a gift. Sorry, I'm just going to check the chats. I see that we have quite a few chats in here. So I'm just going to stop really quickly. Sorry, slides are available. Cool. Yeah, all right, let's keep going, Ashley. All right, so the zone of incompetence. Yeah, things we're not great at. If I can say anything, please delegate those. Find a volunteer, find somebody who is good at it, maybe do a skill swap and change that out. Because a lot of times we spend too much time in the zone of incompetence and that doesn't move us forward. Then there's the zone of competence. So like, you're good at it, you don't like to do it, but you can get the job done. And again, we spend a lot of time in the zone of competence of like, it's fine, I'll just do it. It's fine, I'll just do it. Anytime that you can delegate, please feel free to delegate, especially in the zone of incompetence or of competence. Then there's the zone of excellence. The zone of excellence is all about things that you are really good at. People love it when you do these things. They hire you to do these things. You can get paid a fairly decent wage for doing these things, but it doesn't light your soul on fire. And it's okay to live in the zone of excellence. It's okay if you just want to get a paycheck from that. That's fine. Nobody is judging you. But then there's the zone of genius. And the zone of genius is doing something that you're excellent at, doing something that you love, doing something that brings you joy, and you're getting paid for it. If you learn anything from this, I hope that you can learn to find where your zone of genius is and start to live in that. So, with all of that said, to skill set, what are you capable of? Are you capable of doing things, but they all tend to be in your zone of competence or incompetence? Are you living in your zone of genius? What's something that comes easily for you and that's transferable for you to get a paycheck out of? These are the important things to think of. And in thinking about these things, when you're going back through these exercises, try to look at different areas that you can delegate and different areas where you can live in the zone of genius, because that's going to make you the most money. It's going to bring you the most joy, and you're going to have the most fun out of it, which are important things to lots of people. So, resources. There's tons of different resources, job centers, university centers, co-working spaces. Start reaching out to people, start making connections, and start talking about the project or the life that you want to be living, and asking people to join you or to introduce you to somebody. So many times, this is something that comes out of, living your best life, but also like most connections come out of like face to face, not face to face, obviously in a pandemic, but having those real connections. Okay, networking, these are just some ideas. A lot of times I feel like when we're getting started, we don't know who to ask or who to reach out to. So these are just some ideas for how to start those conversations, right? So are there any social clubs, Facebook clubs, virtual events, Eventbrite, the Dots, I think Pink Shoe Club, I think that's women only, I'm not sure. But then there's virtual book tours or virtual book groups, like book clubs and things like that. A lot of times you'll get a lot of different people from different classes in different book groups, and you're all sort of focused on the same thing because you like reading books or you like whatever the book's about or that type of thing. Joining coaching groups or peer coaching groups and asking for introductions. So these are different ways that you can start different conversations with people to let them know who you are, what you're about, what you're doing, what you'd like to be doing, what interests you, all of the fun things we learned in the introduction. Okay. So now, my very favorite part, let's talk about storytelling and the hero's journey. There are lots of different interpretations of the hero's journey. I think Carl Jung, or was it Joseph Campbell, both of them. I mean, Carl Jung has the archetypes in the hero's journey. Aristotle wrote a book that started this idea of the hero's journey. Joseph Campbell and The Power of Myth is all about the hero's journey. I just want to make this easy for you. Like as much fun as it is to go into the really like diluted, like there's a mentor and a call to action and all those sorts of things, I want to break this down for you as much as possible because I think this formula is a great way to get people on your side. It's a way to tell a good story, and it's really easy to remember, right? Like, let's do it this way. So, a hero is somebody who wants something. They have a goal and they actively pursue it. How often do we hear stories or whatever where we meet the hero, whoever she might be, he or she or they might be. We meet them and they just sit around and nothing happens and they don't want anything. And then when something comes their way, they're like, no, I don't want it. And then you find yourself getting annoyed, right? Like there's this idea in the philosophy of the hero's journey where the hero essentially is like, no, I don't want to go after this. I'm being pulled or whatever. It's hard to get people on your side with that. Like I think in Star Wars, when we first meet Luke Skywalker, he's kind of a pain in the butt. He's like, I don't want to do this. I'm just going to be on this rock or whatever, which is his planet. Anyway, that's a bad example. But if we look at something, the way to get somebody on your side immediately is somebody who wants something and they actively start pursuing it, right? They're like, right, I want to have a food truck. If you talk to somebody, they're like, right, I want to open a food truck. And you're like, cool. Well, have you looked at any trucks for sale? Do you have a menu? What kind of food truck do you want? Have you started branding any of this? Everybody's like, oh, no, I just want it. Well, then I don't care. Go after it. Do something. Start pursuing it. So there's somebody, they have a goal and they actively pursue it. I had a client one time, she wanted to be a stand-up comedian. So she would go to all of these open mic nights, but then she would never get on stage, or she'd get on stage and then she would just be like, no, I'm too nervous. And she'd walk off stage. Okay. So if I were to use her, my client, as an example of the hero's journey, she's somebody, she wants something. She wants to be a stand-up comedian. So she's got a goal. So she actively pursues it. She starts going to open mic nights, right? She gets up at an open mic night and she starts to get on stage and she freaks out. She gets really nervous. And she realizes that she has this fear, this tension, this conflict of stage fright. And that stage fright terrifies her to no end. And so she just runs off stage. Well, now she's facing conflict, right? She's got something that she's got to get past. She has to get past her stage fright. She's got to get past her fear of actually saying something. Maybe the mic's not working. There's all of these things that build tension in overcoming obstacles. So then she goes, and let's say that I want to introduce my own business into this. So I'm like, oh, I'm a storyteller who helps people with their confidence, right? So if I was doing this and I'm doing this to my customer's journey, I would say, so I worked with the client. She wanted to be a stand-up comedian. She actively went after it. It didn't go well for her. She like threw up backstage in the bathroom. It was humiliating. Everybody was like, oh my God, what's that smell? And she was like, I think it's me. I'm really sorry. So then she's trying to come through and she's like, I don't think I can do this. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. If I gave you the confidence to get on that stage and be a stand-up comedian, would you want my services? And she's like, the idea of overcoming the obstacles to get what I want so that I can, pursue my goal. Yeah, I think that's something I can get behind. So I work with her. She tells me her set's really funny. That's not an obstacle. Then she's worried about the mic. And I'm like, right, if you're worried about the mic, let's say the mic goes out. So then start projecting. I teach her about how to project in a bar with all of these people like being crazy around her. And she's got to yell the jokes. And she's like, right, so if the mic goes out, I know that I can get past it. Then I talked to her about nervousness, right? How nervousness is the same feeling as excitement. So how does she reframe that into excitement? So now she's overcome all of these obstacles. So she goes to her open mic night. She performs well. Everybody gets her joke. The mic worked. She was on fire and she got what she needed and what she wanted once and for all. And that's a way of you utilizing how you can put your customer into the hero's journey so that they will use your product or service. And it can be you. You can put you or your service as the hero who's going in there. But this formula works every time. People always get on your side when they see this. Someone who wants something, actively pursuing it, facing conflicts, overcoming obstacles, getting what they want once and for all. Ah, the crowd goes wild. Okay. So what we think the journey will look like when we have our own story or when we have a goal of our own, we think, right, there's going to be some bumps along the road. There's going to be some dips, some high points. It's going to be a bit crazy. How the journey actually is. Oh, there's times where we get splatted on. There's times where we are going in the complete opposite direction. There's times where we're going round in circles. So this is just a way to let you know that you're not alone in knowing that this journey is really, really difficult. So if you were to tell your story of you being a founder, if you were to tell your story of your project or idea, use this as part of to build the tension of the obstacles, as part to build the tension of your audience or your customer getting to know you. These days, a lot of people love to know the owners of their companies. They love to know, they want somebody to be a tribe to, right? They want somebody that they can find their people. So when you're finding your people, don't be afraid of putting yourself in your hero's journey, right? It's good to put your customers there so that they know like, hey, you're going to solve my problem. But it's also good to put yourself there to show that you're like, I have overcome something. I've overcome these obstacles. So in websites, on your about pages, that's why a lot of websites have those like our story things. So if that's the case, please feel free to put yourself in the hero's journey. Talk about what you want, how you went after it, the obstacles you faced, how you overcame something, and where you are today. I think people will really appreciate it and they like getting to know you. Okay. I'm losing my voice. I've been doing a lot of these Zoom sessions. I'm just letting you know if it gets really scratchy, hang in there. I'm sorry. Okay, so how far along are you? And what do you need to get all the way? So, how far along are you in your hero's journey? How far along are you to reaching your goal, to being the success that you want to be? So, yeah. Now we're going to go into confidence and the stories that we tell ourselves and how to build that confidence. Excuse me. Sorry. Okay. So, has anybody heard of the 4 C's theory by Dan Sullivan? I'm going to take that as a no. Okay. So this is all about how to build confidence. So this is a theory. And if you put it to the test, I think you will see that it's actually a tried and true theory. So if you're ever feeling like you have low confidence, use this formula, so to speak, and I think you can help build it back up. So step 1 is commitment. A lot of times when we think about confidence, we'll think like, right, well, I'm not a very confident individual, so that's just how it is. But it's not. If you think about all the things that you've done in your life, you had the confidence to do them. So whether that's developing a new skill, starting a business, taking a course, whatever it is, you've done something because you've committed to do it, right? And you've put it into action. The more things that you put into action, the more your confidence will grow. And let's go through the 4 C's and this formula. So the first thing you need to do is commit, right? Just commit. Say that you want to climb a mountain, or let's go with the food truck example. Say you want to start a food truck. Well, maybe you've never started a food truck before. So this is really, really scary for you and you don't know what you need. But if you just say, I'm going to start a food truck by January 1st of 2022, people are going to eat food off my food truck. It's called Nacho Nachos, and it's all about selling nachos because I love nachos and I want people to have nachos. So I've committed to that, right? What's the first thing I need to do? The first thing I need to do is have courage. So Dan Sullivan, who created this theory, explains that the difference between fear and courage. Fear is being in a situation where you wet your pants, right? Courage is being in the same exact situation where you still do what you're supposed to do, but you do it with wet pants because you still feel the fear. You guys see what we did there? I thought it was funny, so I thought I'd throw it in there. So having the courage to go out there and start the food truck means, right, I have to do something that I've never done before. I need to create recipes. I need to put a menu together. I need to put a marketing plan together. I need to buy a truck, and I need to find a cook that can help me cook all this stuff, right? Those are the 5 things that I need to do to start a food truck. So I've committed to doing this. I've got the courage. And now it's about capability. So do I know how to cook? Yes, I know how to cook. Do I have recipes? Yes, I have recipes. Do I have branding? I don't have branding. Should I hire someone? Yeah, because this is my zone of incompetence. I'm going to hire a branding person. And now that's it. Then I'm going to buy a food truck. Do I have the money to buy a food truck? No. Can I take out a loan? Yes. Is that the best investment? Probably, if these nachos take off, or maybe not. You have to make that decision for you. This is your food truck. But right now it's my food truck. I feel like if I took out a loan to buy a food truck, I could pay it back in the next 5 years and I'd be fine. Cool. So now that I've done all of those steps, I feel like, well, I have everything I need, right? I've built up my courage and I've taken that leap or whatever. And now that I have this food truck, all I'm going to do is drive around to where I think people might be hungry, maybe parks, maybe whatever. I've put my plan in place. And now when people are eating my nachos off my nachos food truck, now I feel like I have confidence. I can now keep going. And if there's something else that I want to do, maybe I can do it because I knew that I committed to this. In committing to this, I put courage first and I made sure that I made decisions that even though I was afraid, I would still do. I built capability, and in building capability, I'm now much more confident in who I am. A lot of this is about planning and rehearsing, right? So a lot of times actors can really understand this idea of courage or overcoming fear because a lot of them have stage fright. They have to overcome this courage every night if they're going to be a performer, right? But the other thing they do is they go through this process of rehearsal, right? So they plan it out, right? They plan knowing their lines. They plan knowing where they're going to stand. They plan knowing when the lights are going to change. They plan changing their costumes. So because they've rehearsed all of this, then they know when they go on stage, well, I've done all of this in rehearsal. I can do it again, only there's going to be an audience there. Yeah, it's going to be scarier, but I've done it. And therefore I have the confidence to do it. So when your confidence is failing, keep in mind that giving yourself a track record of all of the things that you've done is a good way to keep building that confidence. Okay, so now that you have confidence, now that we've talked about building a story and having that story of the hero and putting ourselves in the hero's journey, let's talk about the confidence cave. So, the idea of the confidence cave is that it's a place of transformation, right? So, if you take heroes, let's take Wonder Woman or Batman or something, they have a cave, right? Like Diana, she was on that Greek island. She's Wonder Woman. She was on the Greek island with all of those people that like brought her up to be like a warrior, right? So, she had a place of transformation there. Batman, he's got his Bat Cave, right? That's where he goes from Bruce Wayne to Batman. And what's his source of power? I mean, his source of power, I think, is money, but her source of power is that camaraderie that she had of her support network, right? She had her coach who taught her how to fight. She had the Greek island that was like, also she was God. That helps too. But then, like, how did she recharge? Right? She recharged by knowing these things about herself. How is it that you are going to recharge? Are there people that you need on your team to help you do so? Like Batman had Alfred. He couldn't have done anything without Alfred. What's the system that you need to put in place to ensure that you can go back to your confidence cave? And if you take a stumble or if you feel like you've lost something along the way, you can go back, you can recharge, you have a support system, and you know that, like, right, so these things didn't work, but here's how I can regain my confidence. Here's how I can redo something. Is there a power outfit that you need to wear? Is there superpowers that you need to develop? What are the strengths that you need to build while you're in the cave? So these are all of the things to consider. How can you put the 4 C's and the 4 C's theory into your cave so that if you feel like you're losing your mind a little bit, or if you feel like you're losing something, that you can come back to this? Okay. So now let's talk about the confidence cape. There's the confidence cave where you go to recharge. Then there's the confidence cape that you take out with you into the world. How do you show up in the world so that you do still feel confident, that you do still remind yourself of the story of when you were capable and when you got things done and when you built things? How do you, like, what strengths, what superpowers? I'm really sorry, you guys, I'm losing my voice. But how do you build those? How do you build those things to come out of the cave and to wear these things all in the confidence cape? How do you wear that outside? What are the different attributes that you want to bring with you? Okay. Making your mind on your side. So I'm going to talk about some things that I think are very real for this time, for the pandemic, for all of these sorts of things. I just want to say a trigger warning that if any of you do suffer from mental illness, please seek professional help. But some of these things that we're going to talk about next are all about psychology and how you can get your mind to be on your side and some tasks that you can do. I'm not a trained psychologist, but I have done a lot of story coaching with people, and these exercises do tend to work for the clients that I've had. But again, I just want to lay that out there as a forewarning. Okay, so when crisis and disasters strike, don't waste them. Without problems, we don't have progress, right? Okay, so with that being said, let's talk about you. So in psychology, there is this thing called the default mode network. And the default mode network is just that. It's the idea that you are on autopilot. So you tend to think the same things, right? They just kind of run over and over and over in your mind. And when you're in the default mode network, something happens called rumination. Rumination is exactly what I just said. It's the idea of a broken record, right? So it's just same thoughts repeating over and over and over. Depressive rumination is when the focus of these thoughts start to bring up unwanted feelings. They bring up feelings of sadness, of anxiety, of distress, etc. And I think that a lot of times, if you are a creative or if you're in the creative industries, if you're a freelancer, if you're a solo freelancer, depending upon who you are and where you are, if you spend a lot of time in isolation, if you spend a lot of time by yourself, you have there's more of a tendency for this to come up in these situations. So I just want to make us all aware of that. Okay, so with depressive rumination, there's some tasks that you can do, right? So if you notice that you're starting to think more things, that you're starting to have more of these thoughts that do tend to lead towards the depressive side, or they do tend to sort of put blockers or barriers in front of you, I just want you to take a few moments to write down some of these thoughts and ask yourself if these are limiting you in any way. A lot of times, it's very possible that they are. I know that I felt some of these thoughts. I know that, especially during the pandemic, I know that working as a creative freelancer, I know that working in isolation, a lot of times I'll think, like, right, well, maybe I should have a PhD. I shouldn't be doing this unless I have a PhD, or I shouldn't be doing this, or I shouldn't, or I'm not good enough about that, or things of that nature. And they tend to be self-limiting. So when I thought these things, going through them and noticing that I have these self-limiting beliefs, that I would be like, right, well, what's something that I can do to get past this? So now we're going to come up to another exercise, and that is the Dickens process. So if you find that this is happening to you, this is a process that you can do to help you with your narrative to sort of change that around. So I think it's easy to start with one. I know I put three, but if you just start with one belief, one thing that is self-limiting in some way, whether it's about you, yourself, your career, or who it is that you want to be, but something that's not supporting you. And again, it's putting up a barrier for you. Think about it in this way. What has this belief cost you in the past? Has it cost you any relationships? Has it cost you any projects? Has it cost you your career? What have you lost because of it? So if I were to use this as an example, I would say, right, well, I have this self-limiting belief that I should have a PhD for the work that I do. And because I think that I should have a PhD, I don't charge my clients as much, or I don't feel like I'm as worthy because my partner might have a PhD. And so it's put friction in my relationship, and it's cost me money because I'm not charging my clients enough, or something along those lines. So I've lost money and I've lost relationships because of this belief. So that's what it's cost me in the past. But now, what is it costing me in the present? Am I still not charging the amount that I should be charging for my expertise? If I really look into it, do the people who have, certain degrees make more than the people who don't in a creative freelance career? Maybe, maybe not. Most of the times in a creative freelance career, a PhD isn't necessary. I'm not saying it's not for everybody. This is your own journey, but like, these are the things that I had to go through with myself in order to be like, right, what is this costing me? And is there any truth to it? And am I currently losing opportunities because of this? Right. And then I took some time and I was like, well, if I keep going down this road, right, if these thoughts keep costing me this, what is it going to happen to me in 1 year, in 3 years, in 5 years? And how is it that it's going to affect my career? How is it going to affect my future, my loved ones, all of those sorts of things? So with that being said, that's one way that you can take some self-limiting beliefs that you've been telling yourself, that's been part of your personal narrative, that's been part of your story. That's one way that you can take some of these and then try and change them, right? So if I were to put a new belief in place, right? If I were to look at myself and say, this isn't really working for me. Like, I keep psyching myself out before I even get to the finish line, and that's not working. So if I were to put something else in place and say, right, nowadays, if you have work experience, sometimes that's more valuable than like what a PhD would be. So as opposed to listening to this, as opposed to listening to like me telling myself that I'm not good enough because of XYZ, if I say, well, that's not really true anymore, we're living in a different time, that's just not true, then I could be like, right, so what new belief can I put in place? I'd be like, you know what, instead, when this happens, I'm going to say, I think that I'm really good in terms of experience. Like, I think that I've been doing really well in terms of experience. So when I have these negative thoughts, I'll be like, Ashley, don't worry about that. You've got plenty of experience. And then I can start to develop a new belief and start to develop a new behavior that I can put into my life and create the path that I want and change my personal narrative to be in the direction that's actually going to serve me. With that in mind, let's talk about behavior design, because who doesn't want to talk about behavior design on a storytelling workshop? So in personal narrative, a lot of times we allow the stories that we tell ourselves to dictate who we are and what we do. And a lot of times it needs to work the opposite, right? Like there's some times where we like, oh, I'm not good at this. I'm not good at this. I'm never going to be good at this, blah, blah, blah. And there's a lot of judgment that happens. And there's a lot of things that just make our lives difficult. So Dr. BJ Fogg is a behavioral scientist, and he wrote the book Tiny Habits. If you haven't read it, I would highly suggest it. Although you could just watch this workshop or YouTube him, and he's everywhere. So the idea of tiny habits is that you do something small every day to change your behavior. So there's a playwright and a screenwriter called David Mamet, and he gives out the advice that if you're in the creative industries, or maybe just in life in general, do something every day to enhance your craft, and do one thing every day to enhance your business. So with the idea of we want to enhance our craft and we want to enhance our business, what's something that we can do every day using this tiny habits method to live the life of the story that we want, right? So in order to do this, tiny habits, really easy to remember. They're the ABCs. So you have an anchor, you have a behavior, and then you celebrate. So let's go back to this idea of a food truck. Let's say that I want to have a food truck, and I'm going to keep in mind David Mamet's theory of I'm going to do one thing every day for my craft and for my business. So in order to do that, let's take my craft first. Having a food truck, what's my craft? My craft is food, right? And I'm going to have like whatever my food truck is going to be. But in order to develop my craft, I need to play with recipes, right? I need to play with food. So if I were to choose an anchor moment, I would say, right, well, I have dinner every day. Dinner is one meal that I always know that I have. So if I know I'm going to have dinner every day, then maybe I can use this as a way to try out recipes. So every night that I am working on, whatever, like dinner, I'll make a new recipe. And when I'm making the recipe, I'll write it down to put it on the menu. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But that's an anchor moment. So in the anchor moment, it's something that I'm doing on a regular basis. The behavior is I'm inserting just this tiny new behavior of writing down the recipes so that I can create the menu that I want. And then finally, celebrate. A lot of times we never celebrate our wins. A lot of times we never celebrate our wins. We're always just on to the next thing. So after I sit down and have my meal and I write down my recipe, I'm going to give myself an air high five. Look at me. I just celebrated. That's fantastic. And now I feel good about myself. So with that being said, there's the craft bit, but now let's talk about the business bit. So something that I do every day. Another thing I do every day is I check my email. So if I'm going to be in my email anyway, and I'm going to check it, then if I wanted to do something for my business, I would say, right, I'm going to email one car dealership a day to try and find a food truck within my budget. That's one thing I'm going to do every day until I can find one. So again, an anchor moment. I'm already in my email. I already know that I'm going to be in my email. A behavior. I'm going to email one car dealership to try and find a food truck. And then I'm going to celebrate that. So tiny habits are ways that you can slowly but surely move towards your goal. Because a lot of times we have, a lot of you are still on courses. Maybe you're working. Maybe you have management of a household or family, or you have caring duties that you have to do. And a lot of times we don't set aside the time to move us forward. And instead of moving us forward, we just say, oh, I haven't done this yet, or oh, I'm not getting around to that. And then you beat yourself up, right? If I'm alone, I'm alone. Maybe I'm the only one who does this, but I don't think I am. And if that's the case, this is something that you can develop, just small things that you can do to move yourself towards the goals that you want to be achieving. Okay, part 6, into the unknown. So now we're going to talk a bit about direction. So direction. If you were to go out right now, and let's say that you needed to go to the grocery store or someplace that the government has deemed you accessible to go, then what would you do first, right? You'd figure out your destination, you'd confirm the directions, and then you would go. But a lot of times we don't think about how this journey is going to go for us, right? If we are a new entrepreneur, if we're starting a business, if we're just starting our career, we think, right, I know that I have to do things, but I don't really know what I want to do. Think about one thing, one place that you want to go, and figure out what that destination is. And then start looking at how to get there, right? So if you work backwards of like, I know my place is 2 miles away that I need to be. How do I get there? Maybe the best way is for me to work backwards to find it, or use City Mapper or whatever. But the other thing that I want to talk about in this is that sometimes knowing the correct way to get there is part of the journey. So you have to do what's right for you. I think a lot of times we see what other people are doing and then we're like, right, well, I'm just going to do what they did, when that's not what works for you. Maybe building a business off social media, or building a business on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, maybe that's not the right way for you, and that's okay. I think a lot of times as entrepreneurs, as we're starting something, as we're building something, we're like, we're going to be on Twitter, we're going to be on Facebook, we're going to be on this, we're going to have a website, we're going to do this. That's great. But a lot of times it's okay if you just start with an email list and just do something that's natural and organic for you, because the journey is also the destination. There's a lot of times where I listen to podcasts or TED Talks or hear stories of founders and leaders of companies that they've built from the ground up. And they always have this moment of, when it was just me and my friend writing code, like in my friend's mom's basement, like I didn't realize how precious those days were. I didn't realize how important it was for me to really soak up the fact that we started at this place and we're ending here, but I let so much else get in the way of the journey. The journey is also the destination. So if you don't like the way that you're going, and if you don't like the road that you're going down, it's okay to change it, because the road is also part of the journey. So try and remember that. Like if you hate being on Instagram, don't start a business on Instagram. I just feel like there's so much pressure to be on social media all the time, and you do what's best for you is all I'm saying. So in doing that, knowing that what your destination is and knowing which way you want to get there and the most enjoyable way, and setting the course. Yeah, let's get moving. And then also adjusting. It might be that you want to build a business on social media and then you realize it's too overwhelming and then you scale back. Or maybe you find that you started an email list, but it's too big now and it's just best if you send out a tweet. That's fine, but build the way that you want to build. Okay, so now we're going to talk about direction versus non-direction and patience for yourself. So people that have direction tend to have patience for the future, right? They know they're going to get there. There's a belief there. They know that not everything happens overnight. People with non-direction think everything has to happen immediately. There's this urgency in the present. There's a saying, I don't know who it's by, but that everything that's important is not always urgent, and everything that's urgent is not always important. So remember that, and just know that building something, whatever it is, it's all about building the right way for you and having patience for that. Okay, direction, accepting, embracing change. A lot of us don't like change, myself included. There's a discomfort there. There's a fear there. But if you know where you're going, this is something that you're going to have to embrace and accept. Then there's the idea of a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. I think my internet connection's not great, so sorry if this is all over the place. Growth mindset basically means I'm not good at having a food truck yet. So yet is the key part of the growth mindset, right? So when we're thinking of these stories that we tell ourselves, again, it's having that patience with ourselves of, I'm not there yet, but I'm still building my skills. I'm still trying something new. I'm still on the ground rolling, and I will get there. A fixed mindset is more about like, well, I've never been good at this and I'll probably never be good at this. And it's the idea that you can't teach old dogs new tricks. You can, just might take them longer. Okay, comfort with trying versus, like, I think there's another, I'm full of sayings, quotes that don't have authors. But yeah, there's this idea of, everything that ever got started was just because somebody decided to give it a go, right? See what it's like, try it out, see if it works, maybe it doesn't. A lot of times when we don't have direction, we're just kind of afraid of failing. Like, we don't care what it is, we just don't want to fail. And then on the flip side, a lot of times we're like, we don't really want to do it because if we might have this fear of success as well. I know that I've had this fear for a long time of being afraid of success and being afraid of my own power. And that's a very legitimate thing for lots of different people. But then I came across the concept that success is just a stepping stone, right? So sometimes it's okay if you succeed. Like, I think a lot of times when we think of success, that sort of leads us to think of change. And change is something that can be quite scary. But if you just think of change and success as just a stepping stone to the next thing, then it makes it a lot easier to process. Again, non-direction is this sort of lack of permission, or like this disbelief that we can actually do it. And somebody with direction really believes it and they go after it. So these are all things to consider as well. Okay, failure is not an event, or failure is an event and not a person. I just like this because I think that a lot of us see or maybe view ourselves as failures, and we're not. We're not events. We're all people. So nobody's a failure. Way to go, us. Okay. Finally, this is the last exercise, but I think that this is a really, really important exercise for you figuring out what your story is, what you want, and how to go after it. So Debbie Millman is a designer based in the US, and there's this thing called the Design Your Life essay. And how it works is you imagine your life 10 years from now completely without fear. You dream big, you don't hold back, you write in full sentences, you just do like a sort of word vomit onto a page or a computer. And you give yourself the time and energy in a somewhat healthy mood to focus on who it is you want to be, where you want to be, and how you want your life to be. So you go through all of this in a very specific way. Uh-oh, I think I lost my next slide. Stand by. Sorry, we're all having technical difficulties today. And I'm losing my voice. I mean, I'm really hitting the trifecta here. Okay. Well, I'm just going to stop sharing for a moment. There it is. Hey, we did it. Never mind. Let's keep going. Okay. So the Design Your Life essay. So let's pretend that the time is March of 2031. What does your life look like? What are you doing? What do you do for a living? Do you have any pets? Do you live in a house? Do you live in an apartment? Are you in the city? Are you in the country? What does your furniture look like? So these are a series of questions, and I'll give you this is something that I think that everybody should do just for themselves. People who have done this, Debbie Millman, she's also a university professor, and she talks a lot about how her students will do this exercise on the first day of class, and then they'll come back to her 5, 6, 2 years later, and they'll say, you know what, after I did that essay, like, I really learned a lot about myself, and now I'm living this life. Like, I've built what I set out to build. So I think this is a really powerful exercise for you to just get in touch with who you are and what your story is and where you want it to go. So designing your life essay equals your life with direction. So once you're finished, if you do this, I hope you do it. I did it, and I think it's really beneficial. But go back and read it once a year. Take a look at it. Double check your destination. Confirm that you're still headed in the right direction. Maybe this isn't where you wanted to be. Maybe you set the course and you're like, that's actually not what I want. But maybe then just readjust and keep going. So that is it for me. This is my email down here. So it's ashley@ovalproductions.com. And like I said, I'm going to be giving these slides to Phoenix and Adrian. But that's pretty much it for me. So if anybody has any questions or anything, let me know.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ashley. That was brilliant. I had to duck out for the last 20 minutes, so I'm really looking forward to catching up on the video.
Oh, cool. Yeah, but that's all I have. So I'm happy to stick around if anybody has any questions, but at the same time, I understand that you very possibly could be zoomed out. So there's absolutely zero pressure.
I actually do have a question. Hi.
Hi.
Hi, this is Rebecca. Thanks a lot for this. I was really hooked. So thanks. Yeah, I have this external education that I'll be taking up in September this year. It's on design thinking, so a course on design thinking. And I work as a business analyst in a big software company that is in like reorganization and like kind of redefining themselves. And I want to take this course because I think I do really like improving stuff. Yeah. And finding out how with other people, so not like in a collaborative way.
Right.
So the thing that I'm actually looking for is I need to find a project or a question that is to be answered with design thinking mindset and methodology, like for this course. And I'm absolutely lost on how to find something in a 600 people company, with everyone working from home, not having the coffee talks and finding out about things and opportunities. Are there any tips?
Yeah, the thing, if I was looking at this, if I were you in your situation, I would look at pain points, right? So I would look at the things that just like make my life a living hell on a daily basis, right? So what is it that is, I don't know, with either within the company or without the company, what is something that, you know, you've heard from your friends or coworkers or whatever, where it's like, you know, there's this thing, right? Like maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's the communication, right? Maybe it's how people communicate, or maybe it's being pulled into meetings every 10 minutes. Maybe it's somebody's had an emergency. Like there's something about this idea of, we've lost so many people in this pandemic that like a lot of times people don't feel like they can take the time to, you know, have a moment for that grief or have a moment for that loss. Maybe it's around building projects or project teams so that if anybody has to duck out at any second, anybody else could fill in, right? Because the entire team is well versed on that. Sorry?
Right. So basically, thinking about my own pain points, but also reaching out to other people within the company and just ask them about theirs.
Yeah, exactly.
Would that be okay? All right. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Hi, Ashley. I have a question.
Sure.
Yeah, it was a great presentation. Thanks so much. I'm going to be doing some workshops with young people on storytelling, and I like the whole idea of the hero's journey. But I just wondered, have you ever done any interactive elements to a Zoom? Because it's just a whole other challenge to do this kind of thing with Zoom. Any advice on that?
Yeah, so I go to a lot of storytelling open mic nights where there's lots of things you can do. You can get people to draw and like put it up to the camera. So like drawing something, that's one thing you can do. I do a lot of breakout rooms to where people have like, they're paired up into one or two people and like each person has to tell a story. I know a few storytellers who do storytelling workshops, and they do anonymous stories in the chat. So they have one like separate person or one separate Zoom account, and you send a private message to them, and that has a story in that. And then they tell the story out, and the audience member or whoever told that story has no fear because it's completely anonymous and it only goes to that one Zoom account. So that's something that you can do. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. And that's okay. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Ashley, I think we might be getting thrown out of this meeting pretty soon.
Oh, okay. Bye, everybody.
Are you okay? Are you okay to press stop on the recording?
Yes.
And